Andrew and Peter were brothers. And Andrew, after meeting Jesus, brought Peter to meet Jesus. And then Jesus chose Peter to be the leader of his disciples. You too, like Andrew, can bring someone to Jesus. And in today's first reading, Eli helped Samuel to listen to the voice of the Lord. The Lord was calling Samuel, but Samuel needed Eli's help to realize that it was the Lord calling him. And then Samuel became a great prophet. And you too, like Eli, can help another person to listen to the voice of the Lord. The Lord has not stopped calling. He's still calling. And He will sometimes call people through you. We are called to bring the world to Christ and to bring Christ to the world. And there are a lot of different ways that you can do that. For example, by raising your children well, or by serving as a catechist in your parish, or by getting involved in various ministries of the church. Also, there's a very concrete way of bringing another person to the Lord. And that is simply by treating other people with respect. And I'd like to tell you a little story which is an example of doing just that from somebody that I met in one of the parishes where I served. She was a young woman and she had no particular faith practice. She didn't go to any church. And she didn't really pray. She didn't have any real practice of religion. But she came to our parish and she said she wanted to join the RCIA process, which is a process for entering our church. And I asked her, "That's great, you're welcome to come and be a part of this. But tell me, what brought you to us?" And she said, well, she had dated lots of different guys over the years, and the behavior of those guys was pretty predictable. They all fit the same selfish pattern in the way that they treated her. And then she happened to meet this one guy who was a committed, prayerful young Catholic guy, and she told me, he is the first guy that I've ever dated who treated me with respect. And because of that, I want to learn about his faith. I want to know what makes him tick, that makes him treat me differently than the way the other guys treated me. So she came to our church and she has become a very active member of the Catholic Church. But she was inspired by the way that guy treated her. She was inspired to come to our faith because one of our young men respected her dignity. Well, in today's second reading, in the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians, St. Paul says that when we respect the human body, we glorify God. There are lots of people in our society today who have the same basic attitude that the people of Corinth did back in the first century. They don't believe that there are any moral boundaries for how they use their body. They say, my body belongs to me. It's my body and it's my business. I'm sure you've probably heard that plenty of times. But St. Paul, in that second reading today, reminds the Corinthians of the Christian perspective on the body. He says, you are not your own. You have been purchased at a price, so glorify God in your body. He says your body is a member of Christ. The body is not for immorality, but for the Lord. Paul says that our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And so the point of that second reading from 1 Corinthians is that our body does not belong to us. God made it in His own image. And God is simply letting us use this body for a few years. We belong to Christ. Part of the beauty of Catholic teaching is the fact that God has a beautifully profound plan for human sexuality. And we understand that human sexuality has a twofold purpose in God's plan. First of all, for the loving union of a husband and a wife in marriage. And secondly, for the creation of new life. And those two reasons for human sexuality go together. And so, in the teachings of our church, we believe that the union of a man and a woman in marriage is a part of the intention of God from the very beginning of the human race. The first 2 chapters of the book of Genesis show the beauty and the purity of God's plan. It says, God created man in his own image. Male and female, he created them. He blessed them and he said, be fruitful and multiply. Therefore a man leaves his mother and his father, and he clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. That biblical vision of the dignity of marriage is a perennial truth, and it's still valid today. For those who have received the vocation of marriage, your path to God is through your relationship with your spouse. There's a certain sacredness about your marital relationship, and that includes fidelity, monogamy, and an openness to children. It's the teaching of the Bible and the teaching of our church that lewd conduct, fornication, adultery, and any sex outside the lifelong commitment of marriage is wrong. According to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, it says the sexual act must take place exclusively within marriage. Outside of marriage, it always constitutes a grave sin and excludes one from sacramental communion. If you're wondering where I found that, it's in number 2390 in the Catholic Catechism. And the Catechism goes on and says that all followers of Jesus Christ are called to exercise the virtue of chastity in keeping with their own particular state of life. That's a lifelong task. It involves self-awareness, self-discipline, prayer, and it also involves maintaining healthy interpersonal boundaries. If we're going to be healthy, mature Christians, then we will seek to avoid the near occasion of sin. We will choose friends who will support our fidelity in our relationships. And we will choose not to hang out in places that open the door to infidelity. And we will choose not to fill our minds with the garbage of trashy images. And we will build support systems that help us to be honest with ourselves and faithful to our commitments. We'll treat every person we meet with respect. If we choose to live this way, we will glorify God and we will bring people to Christ.